Let's continue engaging. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to SB64 Decoding webinar. Our theme today is From Born to COP31. My name is Evans Kiriga from GSI Hub. I'm truly excited to have all of you joining us today from different countries, communities, and also experiences. Tonight is not just another climate webinar. This is a youth conversation, a space where we try to understand what happens inside global climate negotiations and why those conversations matter to ordinary people like us. Sometimes climate meetings can feel distant, but there are people who will help us to be able to understand. And that's why we are here in this conversation. We hear words like adaptation, climate finance, loss and damage, or SB64. And many young people feel like these discussions belong to only diplomats, negotiators, or experts. But the truth is, these conversations shape our future. They shape our food systems in our communities. They shape opportunities for young people like you who are innovating. They shape how countries respond to flood, drought, displacement, education, and even jobs. And that's why today matters. SB64 is not just a meeting in Bonn. It was part of a bigger global conversation, preparing the world for COP31. And as young people, especially from Africa and Global South, we cannot afford to remain outside these spaces. Today, we are joined by amazing speakers who will help us break this conversation down in simple, relatable, and human way. This is not a lecture, this is an open conversation. So I encourage everyone, use the chat to share reflections, ask questions, speak from your lived experiences, because climate conversations become powerful when communities are included. And before we begin, I just want to remind everyone, young people are not just future leaders, we are leaders of today. The ideas, stories, collaboration that begin in spaces like this can grow into real movements, policies, and solutions for our community. So, thank you once again for making your time to joining us. Let's learn together, let's question together, and most importantly, let's imagine the future together. Welcome to SB64 Decoding webinar. And I'm glad to have you guys. So I need to see some welcome us from Tanzania. So let's send some reactions. Let's send some reactions. Reaction.
Hello, hi everyone. Am I audible? If I'm audible enough, please can I have a thumb?
You're audible, sir. Welcome, Mr. James.
Okay, hi everyone. My name is James Sylvester Magesa. I'm from Tanzania, actually. I'm the executive director of Regan Action, a youth-led organization dealing with the climate change response in Tanzania, as well as climate climate global goal on adaptation negotiation panelist. Um, negotiation expertise based on the global goal on adaptation, as GGA, as it was explained in Paris Agreement. And I'm very grateful to join you this evening today, and I hope everyone is okay. Before I continue, Mr. Kelvin, can you direct me on what I'm supposed to? Hello, Kelvin.
Hello. Hello, can you
Yeah.
hear me?
Yeah, we can
Yeah,
hear you.
yeah,
Okay, I would just
yeah, yeah.
wanted to ask, maybe you can lead me on where I can start.
Yeah, yeah. Basically, you can share experience of what you've been able to do, and also you can share your experience at SB64 on climate conversation and what does it mean to the young people who are joining here. Most of them are hearing about SB, but what does this SB mean to them, and what does this climate adaptation mean to them, and how does it affect them? Yeah, basically, that's what we want to hear from you. So,
Okay. I think we've been heard enough about the climate change, climate whatever, and this has becoming a global pandemic diseases because it's affect everyone, whether you like, whether you're not, whether you are a developing country or developed country, it will affect you. As we seeing like currently, we've seen the raising of earth temperature, especially in Europe. People have been suffering, but enough people have been dying because of the rise of the temperature from the earth. This is because of the deterioration of our ozone layer, which has been an impact of climate, pollution on our environment, and then it's bring now climate change. So whether they like it's happening in France, and we understand that France is a developed country, but we have seen the impact. So when we're speaking about climate change, we cannot left anyone behind. And when we speaking about SB, this is subsidiary board of implementation, which is the meetings happening before COP. These are the technical meetings that negotiators, countries, and other climate partners are just joined there to explain or to negotiate in deep on what will be discussed on COP. So this is like a roadmap towards the COP, and that's why it's it's always happening in June at Bonn in Germany. Yeah. So when we're speaking about global goal on adaptation itself, first, has anyone here already changed something about how they live because of climate change? Maybe your family moved after floods, or maybe farming looks different now than it did for your parents, like back in the days when it's our parents' times. And maybe walking further for water fetching than you used to, or your seat has started flooding on days it's never used to. So when we're speaking about the adaptation, it's not just a UN concept, it's already inside people's lives, whether or not the policy for it. Because we live it, whether we want or we don't, but it's somehow, it's some people's daily lives. It's not just about the stories. So the global goal on adaptation is the world's attempt to answer one question. Are we actually getting better on coping with climate impact everywhere fast enough? And it comes from Article 7 of the Paris Agreement. When speaking about Paris Agreement, this is it's agreement which signed or agreed by the UNFCCC countries member that they will follow on reducing the pollution in their countries and worldwide. So, and if you strip away the legal language, it's really global scorecard because it means to tell us whether communities, especially the ones facing the worst climate impact, are becoming safer and more resilience at the climate change, or whether they are being left to figure it out on their own. So here's why this abstract for you. The adaptation decision being made right now is about water system, coastal cities, farming, health systems, and the one your generation will live inside for the next 50 years. So you are not just the future stakeholders in the conversation, but you are the ones who inherit whatever gets built or doesn't get built based on what happened in the rooms. So let's talk about what actually happened in those rooms last month, which is SB64. So XB64 ran in Bonn from June 8th to 18th this year, and it was first big negotiation session after COP30 in Belém. And it wasn't meant to lay the groundwork for COP31 in Antalya this November. I'll be honest with you about what happened because I think the honest is more useful to you than a polished version. Adaptation talks at SB64 stalled across the 2 weeks. Progress on the GGA was described by people in rooms as dark stalled uh, and actually differable. So the core fight was about finance. At COP30 in Belém, countries agreed to work towards tripling adaptation finance. Developing country went into Bonn wanting that promises written directly into the GGA text because developed countries were not willing to put into writing. That disagreement turned out impossible to resolve in the 2 weeks available. And the issues has now been published to COP31. That's why I was saying these SBIs are the implementation roadmap towards COP. And there was a second fight actually underneath that one. The GGA is supposed to be measured using something called the Belém Adaptation Indicator. Around 59 indicators meant to actually track adaptation progress worldwide instead or just tracking promises to make those indicators work. And actually countries need a task force to sort out the data the data or method behind them. But even the becoming countries, some countries including Brazil and the EU wanted the task force to be expert led and technical, while others include like middle developed countries and even Arabs and negotiation group wanted to stay under political control of the parties themselves. Then disagreement wasn't resolved either way. So honestly, bottom line, GGA negotiation essentially restart from scratch at COP31 in Antalya. I want just like I want us to pause a bit on that because I don't think if a story about the UN failing. I mean, this is not about the story of UN failing, but I think it's a story about a really disagreement over fairness. Developing countries are saying you promised us like money and finance to adapt, put it in writing, and then developed countries are not willing to. Why? Is because most of the developing countries they're not supporting adaptation, rather they're supporting mitigation. We can ask why they are not supporting the adaptation. This is because most of the developed countries are support mitigation because they know mitigation inside has a technology on how you can mitigate. So they know that when we go with the mitigation, we will depend. We know, like in these developing countries, we are not much developed into technology things. So when we go for the mitigation, we will still go back to them and ask for their technology expertise. So they want to support mitigation because they understand, okay, they will give us money, but at the end, we will return the money to them because we will still want their knowledges and expertise on the technology. So they will still selling their technology and not ourselves. That's why you can find like most of the developed countries, they are not ready to support this. And that tension in the negotiation is pretending it isn't there. If it isn't there, would you know, like, do you know favors as future participant in this process? So there was one hopeful thread at Bonn worth mentioning. The COP30 and COP31 presidents launched something called the Global Implementation Accelerator. It means to give extra support to a small number of high impact climate solutions, helping countries actually implement their national climate plans and adaptation plans on a voluntary basis. It's not just replacement for resolving the finance fight, but it's a sign that some of the energy in the room is shifting from let's negotiate the text to let's actually build the thing. So I just want you to understand why this matter to communities in plain terms, like why this negotiation is important, or why global goal and adaptation is it's important. An agreement adaptation indicator, like it sound like paperwork, but it's the difference between a community knowing whether the flood warning system is actually funded and built or just promised on paper. A farmer knowing whether the seed varieties sweet changing rainfall will reach their village or stay stuck in a pilot paper project somewhere else, whether it's in Europe or whether it's in any of the developed country. Or when a coastal town, like knowing whether their seawall gets built then this decade or the next one. But in general, the finance fight was stolen thing in board. It's really a fight about who pays for those things and how fast. So where young people can fit in this, in this room or in this GGA context, because you don't just need a negotiator badge to be part of the of this story. Because being in the negotiation room, you're supposed to have a party badge. So party badge is the government badge, which is given by your country. Only those people who having this badge can be able to enter in the negotiation. And having a party badge doesn't give you a mandate to go, to negotiate. Is you are supposed to, like the head of delegation from your country, sometimes giving the authorities to other, like, okay, you will negotiate on this. So having this badge, I mean, having it or not having it, uh, doesn't like, okay, you need to be part of the story. But if you want one, the door is genuinely open. You can even just find it in another way. So Yungo is the official youth constituency inside the UNFCCC, and it's the formal channel through which young people voices reach the negotiations. So local conference of youth is happening in the countries around the world right now, feeding into global youth climate statement that gets handed directly to the world leaders at COP31. Like what we did last year, we just represented, defended, and handed it to the UN General Secretary, uh, but also in the COP30, COP30's president as well as UNFCCC secretariat. There are fellowship and simulation programs open for application. And this moment, indigenous one, including one for indigenous youth focused especially on adaptation policy, and the programs for young people from Global South to attend COP31 directly, I think. And beyond that, beyond the formal delegation, you can even follow the GGA storylines as it's head into Antalya. Watch whether the finance language gets resolved, or watch whether that indicator task force finally gets formed, and how it push your own country's delegation through whatever your network reaches them to reflect the priority you actually live with. Um, by closing, maybe because of the time and giving other panelists to explain. The GGA sounds like it's just a paperwork, but it's actually a fight over who gets to feel safe as the climate change, and how fast the safety reaches to the people who need it most. Because you just don't need a title to care about the outcome. But if you want one, and then the road to Antalya is even open to you right now. And it starts with us paying attention to exactly the kind of conversation we are having today. Because at the moment right now, maybe we cannot be able in a position to stop the climate change itself, but we can even be able to find a way on how we can adapt. Okay, maybe the flood is flooding now. So on how we can adapt these flood things. Um, Maybe it's rising of the temperature like it is right now outside the world there. How the people can adapt it. So that's why the global goal on adaptation is really needed, and it's supposed to be well trained, well educated, and well reached to everyone, because right now everyone is facing this climate change. But how can we adapt it? That's why we are going to, and we are we are vying for GGA. Thank you so much for that. Maybe I can hand it over to Kelvin.
Thank you. Thank you very much, James, for that insight. I hope it opens the floor, and also young people are enjoying the conversation. If you're enjoying the conversation, you can just send a reaction. I want to see some reaction. If you're enjoying the conversation, I would like to open a floor. Anyone who has a question or a concern, anyone who has a question a question related to the conversation we're talking about. You can just raise up your hand. I'm giving a chance to only one person.
I think there is one in the
Yeah,
chat.
amazing. Yeah, maybe you can just respond to it.
It says how to get the negotiation badge of my country. Which country are you from? I would like to know. Al Mustafa Ibrahim. Which country are you from, baby? Mali. Okay. You are support these badges. You can get it from the contact or focal person of the UNFCCC in your country. Each countries have the focal. I mean, each countries who have signed the Paris Agreement. How the member of the UNFCCC has a focal point in each country. So I think you are supposed to reach out to your Ministry of Environment and if climate change. So it's where you can ask these badges because they have someone who is specially dedicated as the focal person who can register you as the other. I mean, at the what at the party's badge. Regardless, they just don't share it um, freely as the government. I mean, you have to identify the potential area why you should attend this, why they can give you the acknowledgement or the badges. So the badges are different because there is an observer, there is party overflow and party. The observer, you will not be able to enter in, I mean, in the negotiation rooms. Rather, you can attend in other rooms. Like there is green zone and blue zone. In the blue zone, you will not be able to attend in this negotiation. Maybe in the side events, but in green zone, you can whatever doing there, you can be able to join. Someone asked the badges for free. Yes, it's for free. You are not supposed to be charged by anything. It's for free, and you can get it from your government or other accredited NGOs or IBOs, which have been accredited by the UNFCCC. So when you go for the NGOs one or for the organizations badge, you will go as the observer one. But if you opt and go into the government, they can give you um, party overflow. Party overflow, and I mean, you are just a party, but you're not allowed to enter in those like really, really negotiation rooms. But party is the government now, so you can be allowed to enter in any kind of negotiation rooms. Like you can enter in except of those VIP rooms. I think I've answered the question, and someone is asking. This one has done the major a very this is minions in RFT humanitarian. This is introduction. Okay, one does not pay for a badge. If an observer organization attempt to sell a badge to you, ensure your report to if an okay, it's AI things. If an observer organization attempted to sell a badge to you, ensure that you report to UNFCCC. Yes, because these badges are for free and not aimed to be sell it or to be. It's not a business. Yeah, I think I've answered it. Okay, I see Abdul has raised the hand. Welcome. Uh, okay, so what are the most effective adaptation strategy for small scale farmers? Okay, so as the question, sorry, I just joined late. You're welcome. So responding to your question that what are the most effective adaptation strategy for a small scale farmers? It depends first on also like the most effective adaptation strategies. This can be first explained within a country context because each country's in your NDCs and national determinant contributions, you can find this. So each countries have outlined their ways on how they can like do this scale small scale farmers on their based on their local context. That's why you find like NDCs, we are vying for NDCs, and current now is NDC 3.0. So you can find this maybe you can take time asking for your country's NDCs, and you can be able to understand when you read on the part of the adaptation. They can be able to explain it in very, very good, because I cannot. Every country has the way to describe small scale farmers, so I cannot be able to directly answer this, but maybe I can direct you to where you can get this. It's on your NDC's country, or go direct to the adaptation part, and then it's where you can read and understand this. I hope you have to know if if do you understand, like, your countries has updated maybe the NDCs. It's where you can get this information. I hope I've answered your question. There is a criteria to answers in order to get these badges of negotiation. I think first you have to, I don't know, maybe I can explain based on our country. First you have to write a official letter to your focal point, to the UNFCCC focal point, but you have to highlight what what the country will benefit from you just joining, or you just going there. So you have to say that, and after oral, you have to to promise, or to show them that you have already secured funding, because they don't give you funding; they just give you an accreditation. So you have to go through your Mali focal person for the UNFCCC, and you have to write a letter to them, and then you have to ensure you have tell them that you have already secured fund to go, and to facilitate your engagement in those days that will be there on ground. And the other things, I think you have to provide a proof of citizenship, like a passport number and something like that. So yes, and Kelvin Sandia, check your countries and disease, and then you can find them there. Over to you, Kelvin. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. James, for those insights. Actually, I hope I love how you guys are curious representing your country. And there's something that Mr. James mentioned. You have to show your country what you can be able to do, or how your country is going to benefit. So this means you need to build capacity as a young person. I hope you guys are noting that. So, and how do you build capacity? By being able to understand various things that are operating. So basically doing small action. And after this conversation, this is not just a conversation. This is a conversation to be able to, uh, for us to be able to plan what is going to happen as we head to COP 31 at Antalya. So would like to welcome our next speaker. Our next speaker is very ready, Mr. Aston. He is from Kenya. He has a very wide, vast experience, and is going to cover something that we as young people love: action on climate empowerment. This is a very key thing. Actually, this is an
Thank
implementation
you.
engine. I know Mr. Aston is ready here. So, Mr. Aston, are you ready? You can just continue. Yeah.
Yes, thank you very much, Kevin, but also confirm if you're able to hear me. Thank you.
Yeah, we can hear you,
Uh,
Mr. Bob.
thank you. So I'll share a bit around the action for climate empowerment. And so as we begin, I think first, just to liven the mood a bit, we want us to share just what usually comes to our mind when you hear about action for climate empowerment. So we use a tool called Slido. So on your mobile phone, just go to slido.com. Then when you ask for a code, just input 202, or you can also scan the QR code there. But I think I'll also share the link on the chat. So just using one word, what comes into your mind when you hear of action for climate empowerment? So you can scan the QR code. I want to copy the link on the chat. Or alternatively, you can just click on this link. Yes, I think I've also shared the link on the chat. So just click on the link. So what comes into your mind when you hear of action for climate empowerment? Just use one word. So just using one word, what comes to your mind when you hear of action for climate empowerment? Just one word. At least you've had someone say it. For them, they think of climate. Those are, although those are two words, not one, but just use just one word. Anytime you hear someone talking of action for climate empowerment, what generally comes into your mind? So, in case you've not joined, whichever browser you're using, just type slido.com, slido.com. Then you'll be asked for key, which is the code, which is 202. Then you're able to share, but also just click on the chat. So in the chat, I've shared the link. So in the chat, just click on that shared link, then you're able to add. So we've had someone has said for them, when they hear action for climate empowerment, they think about climate literacy. Someone else has said they think about education, they think about youth engagement, they think about capacity strengthening. Yes, more please, they think about justice, they think about adaptation, they think about youth, they think about empowerment, they think about transformation, capacity strengthening, education. There are two are typing. Just wait for those two so that you can proceed. But so far, majority of us, when you hear about action for climate empowerment, we think about climate literacy. There's also the climate scientists. There's youth engagement. You think about youth engagement. You think about transformation. You think about education, climate scientist, action. Where those who are typing, we just wait for then you proceed so that you don't spend a lot of time. But thanks a lot for sharing. There's someone who, when they hear about action for climate empowerment, they think about innovation. So far, majority either adaptation, education, or climate literacy. There's also hope. When you hear someone talk about action for climate empowerment, you think about hope, you think about positive conduct. Thank you all. There are two are typing. Okay, we'll just wait for those two, then you can proceed. But so far, majority, it's adaptation, it's education, it's climate literacy. So thank you so much for sharing your thoughts on action for climate empowerment. We want to do a short, just hopefully to play a short 1-minute video.
Hello, I can't hear. I don't know what's happening.
Thank you. So hopefully you're able to hear the audio. So I played the video, but I'm not sure if all of you are able to hear the sounds. Someone confirm if you're able to hear the sound. Oh, okay. There was no voice. I thought there was the audio. Okay, so apologies for that. So I'll share just a short presentation. Generally, because the video is supposed to talk a bit about action for climate empowerment, but at the same time now I'll just do a short presentation just to show what is. So we are talking about action for climate empowerment. And generally, anytime you hear someone talking about action for climate empowerment, we're normally looking at 6 different elements. You're talking about education, we're talking about training, we're talking about public awareness, access to information, public participation, and international cooperation. So these are what we refer to as S elements. So when you hear someone talking about S elements, this is what they mean. They mean education, training, public participation, public awareness, access to information, and also international cooperation. In the climate change space, particularly when you're talking about the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, that's when you're talking about Article 6 of the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. At the same time, when you're talking about, for example, the Paris Agreement, we're talking about Article 12, which is about action for climate empowerment. So anytime, particularly the work that most of us do, because most of the time, like even right now, what we are doing is actually part of action for climate empowerment, because this workshop or this dialogue also acts as a form of training. So this is one element or aspect of action for climate empowerment. In our schools, right now, most governments across the world are trying to ensure that they're able to capture issues around climate change into the education curriculum. So that's still part of action for climate empowerment. When you're creating public awareness, like most of the work that young people are doing, either through social media, through different platform or channels, that's action for climate empowerment. When you're trying to access climate change information, it is you want to ensure that even government, they want to ensure even maybe in their website, one is able to access these documents, able to upload the various climate change information and documents. That's access to information, which is also part of action for climate empowerment. Public participation is key anytime we're talking about climate change, because part of it, when you're engaging stakeholders in your own country, in your own organization, when you're trying to bring people together just to share climate change information, that's action for climate empowerment. So action for climate empowerment is mainly around these 6 elements, which are called the 6 S elements, or 6 S priorities: the education, the training, the public awareness, the access to information, the international cooperation, and also public participation. Now, during COP, James had talked about the Conference of Parties, that's COP, and also the subsidiaries bodies meeting. So during COP 26, which took place in Glasgow, in Scotland, countries developed a 10-year work program to implement those 6 S elements that we just talked about. And in that work program, they're looking at 4 main themes. That's around policy coherence. They're talking about coordinated action. They're talking about tools and support. They're also talking about monitoring, evaluation, and reporting. This was developed mainly to ensure that you're able to effectively implement the 6 S elements that we just talked about: the education, the public participation, the public awareness, the training, the 6 elements that we just talked about. So this work program, the 10-year program, was mainly developed to enable countries to implement those 6 S elements. So for example, looking at policy coherence, how does our policies in our own country talk about maybe education, talk about training, talk about public participation, talk about public awareness? How are our actions coordinated? If, for example, like right now, when as a young person, one of the areas where youth actions, particularly in COP or in the climate space, are coordinated is through YONGO, which is the Children and Youth Constituency under the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So you're talking about coordinating climate action. We're talking about the tools and support. How do we ensure that this gets to the rest of the world? Which type of tools do we use? Like, for example, for young people, most of you maybe use one of the tools, maybe social media, among others. So the work program that was developed in order to implement those 6 S elements, which is called the Glasgow Work Program on Action for Climate Empowerment, looks at these 4 main areas to enable us to implement the 6 S elements. Now, James had talked about the meeting in Bonn, which is called the Subsidiaries Bodies Meeting. So during that meeting, when you're talking about action for climate empowerment, specifically the 6 S elements that you just talked about, in Bonn, mainly they're looking at the negotiations. We're looking at first Generally, one of the agendas during that time was on action for climate empowerment. And for the action for climate empowerment, we are looking at developing a new 4-year action plan. So currently what countries are doing, they're implementing the action plan for 2023-2026, which actually is expiring this year. So during Bonn, the discussion was how now do we move to develop now the action plan for 2027 to 2031. Then at the same time, part of the discussion was also around capacity building. Most of the time when we talk about action for climate empowerment, we also talk about capacity building. And when I talk about capacity building, we normally talk about capacity building in three different forms. One, when you look about capacity building, we're looking at it at the individual level. For example, in this meeting, you are being trained on SB and general climate change as an individual, but maybe you're also in an organization. So the next step, it's an individual level. Then the next step is at organization level. So capacity building is at the individual level, organization level. Then the third element is at the systemic level. And at the systemic level is when now we are looking at it in terms of policy influence, the policy structure, and the rest. So capacity building looks when talking about capacity building, we're looking at it at three different levels: the individual level, you as a person; the organization level, you work in organization or you're volunteering in organization. When your capacity is built, the assumption is that you'll go back to your organization and you'll also share the information, or you'll also build the capacity of others. Then another point for the subsidiaries bodies meeting was now also looking, or there were technical workshops on action for climate empowerment. And part of this, particularly for young people, is that there was also the S dialogue. So the S dialogue brought together different youths from different countries, generally looked around intergenerational dialogue. And part of it was just sharing information, sharing experiences around education, training, public participation, public awareness, international cooperation, and also public access to information. So these are the main things that were discussed during the SB64. So the reason why it's called SB64 is that this is the 64th subsidiaries bodies meeting. In a year, we normally have 2 subsidiary bodies meeting. The first one in a year usually takes place in Bonn, Germany. Then the next one in the same year usually takes place during COP. COP is the Conference of Parties. So this year in Bonn, we had now the 64th subsidiary bodies meeting. Then during COP 31, which will take place in Antalya, Turkey, we'll now have the subsidiaries bodies meeting the SB 65. Then finally, because part of this engagement is supposed to lead us to COP31, how as young people can be able to engage, can be able to participate during COP31. One really important aspect is to ensure that you're able to engage or reach out to your country focal point or negotiators. And I think James already talked about that. In any country, normally have focal point. The people normally lead the negotiations, and most of them are from the ministry in charge of climate change. So one aspect, particularly as a young person, try to reach out to your ministry. Try to know, for example, who is the action for climate empowerment focal point in your country? Who is maybe the focal point for maybe loss and damage in your country? Who's the focal point for maybe adaptation, mitigation, among others in your country? The moment you're able to reach out to them, you're able to engage and you're able to know what are also their plans. Another key aspect, if, for example, you're going to COP31, as a young person, you want to engage on action for climate empowerment. The next step is now to see, are you able to host a side event? Are you able to organize or collaborate with others to organize a side event during COP31? We normally have pavilions in COP31 where countries have like their pavilion, a place where they share information, they talk about climate change among others. So are you able to maybe have a side event even in your country's pavilion? If maybe you're from Kenya, reach out to your government and know, will Kenya, for example, have a pavilion in COP31? And how can you, for example, organize a side event in your pavilion? The same for other countries. So a good way to engage during COP31 will be through the side events at the various pavilions. Another aspect is each COP usually have a children and youth pavilion. So the Children and Youth Pavilion usually brings together youth from different countries, actually both youth and children from different countries. They're able to share information, they're able to learn from each other, they're also able to network. So even COP31, there'll still be a Children and Youth Pavilion. So if, for example, we're attending COP, one area that you really need to look out for and try to engage as much as possible is always to go to the Children and Youth Pavilion so that you can be able to network, interact with other youths, and also learn from them what they're also doing in their specific countries. So ensure that you're able to follow up and also read a bit about the Children and Youth Pavilion, and also, which is also important, if in case you're planning to attend COP31, also try and see if you can be able to also have a side event or a meeting at the Children and Youth Pavilion. Also key, and this is now for those following or interested in the action for climate empowerment. Every year, most countries normally develop their position statement before COP. So in your country, try and find out when is your country developing their position statement, the COP31 position statement, and try and see if you can be invited so that you can also be able to inform the negotiation. So the position statement for countries is usually now across all the agenda items: adaptation, mitigation, loss and damage, just transition, generally all agenda items during COP. But most countries normally meet before just to discuss and say, okay, this will be our position. But also during COP, most countries are normally clustered in what we call blocks or negotiating blocks. For example, in Africa, there's an African group of negotiators where they discuss and agree that as Africa, this will be our position, maybe on action for climate empowerment. This will be our position as Africa, maybe on adaptation, on mitigation, on just transition, among others. So this is also a good platform for you to see how you can be able to engage in your own country before COP31. Also important is that each year, in case you're not a member of Yongo, it's also important to, after this, try and maybe interact with Yongo members, because Yongo is normally really key because they're the ones who, they're the Children and Youth Constituency and the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. So engagement at COP, particularly for young people, is normally through Yongo. So in case you're not a member, in case you want to know what they're doing, kindly just go to on their website. You can be able to learn more about Yongo, but at the same time, even COP engagement, among others, you can be able to get more information when you're able to interact with Yongo. Also key and important, each COP, we normally have the capacity building hub. Capacity building hubs are normally really key in terms of just learning and knowing what's happening, in other countries. So when in COP, one really important also area that you can be able to engage is also through the capacity building hub. So these are some of the areas as a young person that you need to explore and also see before COP31, so that you can also start planning on how you'll engage and also how you participate. So my last slide, and these are actually extracted from the COP31 website. So COP31 already has a website. So when you go to the website, you can be able to see to see their priorities. And actually, one of the 10 priorities area is actually children and education. I mean, youth and education. So already you can see the importance that already they are showing when it comes to youth. So in the website, they've said with 1.8 billion people aged 10 to 25, youth represent the generation that will experience climate impacts longest, yet their meaningful participation in decision making remains limited. COP31 will strengthen climate literacy, intergenerational knowledge exchange, and youth engagement in climate processes. So thank you all. Unless maybe there are questions that I can respond to. Thank you. Back to you, Kevin.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Bob Aston. Actually, you have shed the light, and I hope young people you are learning. And a very good thing for us tonight, we have a speaker from Yongo, Loss and Damage Working Group, who will be able to share with us some insights of what they're doing. So I would like to open up the door for questions and also reflection. Anyone Anyone who has a question, you can just raise up your hand. I'm giving a chance to one person. Anyone? Yeah, thank you for the reaction, guys. Let's continue sharing the reaction. Anyone was a question? Yes, Mr. Brian Carissa. Brian Carissa, if you can hear me, the floor is yours. Yeah, Brian. Yeah, if Brian can't hear me, we can go to Sunny.
All right, so good evening. Sorry, in Nigeria it's actually an evening. So good evening, everyone, and good evening to the speaker. Thank you so much for this wonderful presentation. I sincerely appreciate. So I want to ask a question regarding the Yongo. Earlier this year, I tried joining, but up to now, I haven't heard their feedback. So I don't know if there is something, or maybe there is a kind of network you would give me so that I will reach out to them and apply for being a membership. Thank you so much. It's actually no question, but then kind of. Hello, please, am I
Hello.
being okay?
Yeah,
Actually,
thank
mine
you
is
very
not a
much.
question. Mine was
Yes,
not a question,
Brian,
but
I'll respond to all.
mine was not a question, but it was a request. I just wanted to tell Bob to share the slides.
Okay, maybe I can try to answer because I think. Oh, Bob, you are welcome.
No, I was saying I just wanted to indicate that I'll share the slides, so you get the slides. Thank you.
Because there was an issue on he was asking because he just asked to join the Yungo, and unfortunately he didn't get back the answers or the response. I don't know much. I'm also the Yungo. The I'm in different working group, but what I can say it's maybe you can check your spam sometimes, but also sometimes the delay on approval. I think they only contact those people who have qualified. So sometimes if you think if you saw it's quiet also is the answer in a different way. So you better apply again. Also because also there were when did you apply? I don't know when it was. I think also there is a transition of the focal points. So there are sometimes kind of email transitions and stuff like that. But I would like to recommend you to apply again, and I hope this time they will give you an answer.
Yeah, thank you very much for that clarification. And I hope we'll get more clarification as we move on. Yeah, so I hope I've not locked anyone out. Anyone who has a question can give a chance the last person, then we can go to the next speaker. So I saw someone. Yes, Sarah.
Uh, to the person who is asking about Yongo and wanting to be part of it, perhaps I could send you an email to one of their focal points. Actually, the focal point on loss and damage, so you can maybe make a bilateral conversation on your issue with them. I think with what the transitions they're currently going through could be another delay on their side that they're currently not responding to all of that. And then currently there are a lot of meetings happening with climate change. So it might take quite some time for them to respond to you. So I could send you an email to make that bilateral request.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that actually. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And also we'll have now want to welcome our second speaker. Yeah, I want to welcome our second speaker, our third speaker, Madam Sarah Rashid, all the way from Egypt. And I hope you are in. I can give you
Yeah,
mic.
hello everyone. My voice is clear, right?
Yeah, you're clear, clear.
Okay, can I share my screen, please?
Yeah, you can share, you can share.
Hello, let me introduce myself. I'm Dr. Sahir Rashid. I'm assistant lecturer in energy and industrial economy at Oslo University. Also, I'm PhD researcher in green hydrogen, trainer and mentor for climate policy papers and also, I have my startup. It's called Fabronics. It's in recycling of textiles to make like healthier awareness for women. Also, I'm a climate finance graduate in 2020. When I talk about climate finance, let us start with a simple, powerful answer. We don't have a climate problem, by the way, but we have a finance problem. Because we already have many of solutions to climate change. We know how to build renewable energy, but also we know how to adapt the new solutions like to flood and drought. But the real question is who's paying for these solutions? Who's being left behind? So today we are going to talk about this issue, finance, and what it means and what is being negotiated as SB64. So, so what's climate finance? Climate finance is the money that's used to address climate change. Like it supports two things: mitigation, like reducing emissions, renewable energy, clean support, and adaptation to adjust the climate impacts, like flood protection, drought resistant agriculture. Climate finance is not just about money, it's about survival and resilience. We can say also it's about justice, and this is the most important thing. Let me make this more real with a couple of examples here in my country. Here in Egypt, we have Benben Solar Park, one of the largest solar parks in the world, was made possible through international climate finance. This project provides clean energy, creates jobs, reduces emissions. Another example is like Africa, farmers are receiving support through climate finance to use drought-resistant crops, improve irrigation, protect livelihoods. So climate finance is not abstract; it's directly affecting people's lives. So when we say the big challenge or what's happening in at SB64, let me just tell you a brief story. Back in 2009, developed countries promised to mobilize 100 billion per year in climate finance for developing countries. But today, the target has been met. Much of the funding comes as loans, no grants, and access to finance is still very difficult for many countries. So there is not enough money, not fair distribution, not accessible. And this leads, by the way, to a measure injustice. Countries that contributed the least to climate change are the ones suffering the most. So when we say what's happening at SB64, SB64 is a part of the global climate negotiation process under the UNFCCC. So this is where countries come together to discuss the key issues, including climate finance. Right now, one of the biggest discussions is about the new collective quantified goals, the NCQG, which is basically a new global target for climate finance paying the $100 billion. Countries are negotiating how much money should be provided, who should contribute, and how the money should be distributed. So, when we say who pays, how much, and to whom, this matters to youth. So, why should young people care about climate finance? Because climate finance shapes the kinds of jobs, the solutions that will be implemented, and the future that will be inherited. And yet, young people, by the way, are often not included in decision making, not aware of these processes, not empowered to engage. So, when we say that climate finance is not about just billions, it's about justice. We have here, or we can say, or we can ask ourselves who gets protected and who gets left behind and what kind of future we are building. Right now, the future is being negotiated. It should not be only negotiated, it should be understood, questioned, and influenced. And this is where young people come in. Around the world, youth are not just waiting, they are already leading climate finance solutions. For examples, when we talk about initiatives like Mock-up, it brought together young people from over 140 countries to simulate climate negotiations and push real recommendations on climate finance and equity. Another example for the Global Youth Climate Network, where young leaders advocate for more accessible and just climate funding, especially for communities in the Global South. And global platforms, many young people are creating local climate funds, supporting community adaptation projects, launching green startups and innovations. So youth are not only maybe interested in climate finance, no, they are becoming designers and drivers of it. So my message to all youth all over the world, just learn about it, talk about it, engage with it, and be part of shaping it because climate finance is not just a technical topic, it's a tool for justice, transformation, and change. And it's a space where your leadership matters. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your listening to me. If you have questions, you can ask me. And here is my slide for context for further communication. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, Madam, for that insight. I think you have mentioned some key crucial issues. Young people are not just waiting, young people are co-creating. But how best are we going to make this climate finance accessible to them? That is the bigger question we're supposed to ask ourselves. Yes, we are saying about global conversations, but finance is a key tool in making sure that our actions are being implemented back at home. So I see some people have questions. I can start with Alfred Gabriel Lomo. You have a question? You can just ask.
Yes. To our presenter, Madam Sarah, thanks very much for the presentation. It was very brief and understandable. But I want to get something clear here. We've been hearing about climate finance for years, like for some of us, we've been around for like 4 years now. I've been around with it. And I want to figure out how can we utilize climate finance with regards to financial equity? That is the right population getting the right amount to do the right thing.
As I'm hearing, you are asking me how climate finance implement equality, right?
I said how can we utilize climate finance with regards to financial equity? That is, the
Yes.
countries that are, the environments are really affected, getting the actual amount that it needs to solve climate related problems. How?
Yes, I will tell you. This first of all, it's based on in youth climate youth initiative. Like we have here in Asia Cup Simulation Initiative, we bring women and men, genders from all over the world, by the way, and they sit together, they negotiate, they bring different ideas together, they bring solutions, they write policy papers, and we begin to mention them how to write the policy paper, how to discuss the climate finance, how to implement the climate finance in real projects. So, and they distribute their ideas together among youth, different genders, and they start to implement it, especially in the real projects that can be transformed from the policy papers. And this real project has a condition to achieve the target of supporting jobs for both genders, not only for sustainability, you know. I hope that I got your point.
Honestly, I didn't get you much clearer. I got a very few things along the way, but not much. Yeah.
Yeah,
Please,
I
can
hope
you write
Gabriel, your question.
on the chat because I think that I have a technical error. I can't hear clearly.
Yeah, maybe Gabriel, you can just type your question in the chat box so that Madam Sarah can see the question. Yeah. Anyone else who has another question? Yeah. Anyone else has another question? So as part of our reflection, I want you guys to be able to think this. What climate opportunities do you want from young people to access? What climate opportunities do you want us to be able to access? So I'd love to get some reflections from you guys who are in here, or some reflections. So I need to get some reflection. Anyone who can be able to answer this question and also share maybe some opportunities here we can be able to access as young people. Yeah. Anyone else who can be able to share that, because we are talking about climate finance, but where do we access these opportunities? And most young people here are running very, very good initiatives, but they don't know how to access these opportunities. Maybe someone can be able to share some of these opportunities that exist. Anyone who can be able to share can just raise up your hand. Yes.
Okay, I can see that
Or we can hear from our
Austin, Austin can see that I'm not here at the end. Okay, I can explain my point of view in a brief way. I mean that climate finance implements equality by targeting investments, toward populations. So through strategic development of climate finance funds. The most important thing is to create green jobs and build resilient infrastructures in entire areas like developed countries, this. So this will produce the income inequality and advancing goals, sustainable development goals, by the way, according to or among different genders. I hope this will be more clear to you.
Yeah, thank you very much for sharing that. I love to get the perception of maybe Mr. Aston on this question so that you know, the available opportunity that organization and the young people you are working with. Mr. Hello.
Hi,
If
hi.
Mr. Aston can hear.
Oh, hi,
Yes,
Philip.
yes, you can proceed.
Yeah, I didn't get it well, but I think you're talking about around what climate opportunity will you want more young people to access? Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So I know right now, I think almost all of us are talking about climate finance. And under climate finance, one opportunity now also still under climate finance, and I know this is something that now more people start talking about, is the funds for responding to loss and damage. So the issue around loss and damage, because when you're looking at about the impact of climate change, most of those who are affected are actually young people. When homesteads are maybe swept by floods, it's the children, it's the youth who are really, in most cases, will be the most affected. So the funds for responding to loss and damage is that we need to really explore and see how it can also benefit young people. So that's maybe one area that we need to just explore, particularly as young people. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Maybe we can get another perception from Mr. James. You are still around, Mr. James Magesa. So James Magesa, if you are still around, you can be able to share. If Mr. James is not around. So what climate opportunities we want more young people to be able to access? There are various opportunities we guys can be able to access, and we'll be sharing as we continue. I want us to get into our last speaker. Our last speaker is from Younger Working Group. Madam Nova. So she'll be able to share his perception about loss and damage, what happened at SB64, and what are some of the opportunities young people can be able to engage, because we are young people and we need to understand what are some of the opportunities available and what are some of the key achievements that we achieve in terms of loss and damage during SB64. If you are here, Madam Nova, you can just continue. Thank you.
All right. Hello. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. May I see a heart reaction or a thumbs up if you are ready into this final stage of the sharing? All right. That's very good. All right. I hope you are still awake for those who are in the evening time. My time here in the Philippines is 1:23 in the morning. So let me start with this. It's a very short sharing. So once again, hello everyone. I am honored to be here with you today as a member of Yongo, the official youth constituency of the UNFCCC. Representing the global youth is about bringing rigorous, actionable substance. So as a working group, we follow the technical progress of climate negotiations with precision. Our focus is in the loss and damage work stream, where we actively shape the agenda by submitting concrete drafts, policy briefs, and targeted recommendations to ensure that those hit hardest by climate impacts, especially us and the future generations, are not left behind. And recently, we have just wrapped up the SB64 sessions in one, and we are here today to bridge that gap between those negotiating rooms and our global community to those who were not there in the SB64 by sharing here the updates coming from the loss and damage. What are the key updates? What were the major outcomes and our strategic outlook looking forward to COP31, which will happen in November. So when extreme weather or rising sea levels permanently destroy homes, permanently destroy crops or the islands, it is called loss and damage. And then the communities cannot or cannot adapt to this. And so the damage is already done. But what will happen at the SB64? These are all technical workshops going on with technical expertise across sciences and human sciences gathering together. And we are here to share you an update about loss and damage work stream. So here is what happened. Sad to say, there is no dedicated spotlight for loss and damage during SB64. World leaders didn't give this crisis its own official meeting room. Instead, it was tossed into side conversations about money, about farming, and about research. We have heard the previous speakers ago that at the SB64, there are negotiating rooms, there are blue zones, there are rooms that we cannot enter. But in the case for loss and damage, this agenda was not put really into the table. Hence, it was only found at the side events. So this is one of the saddest things that happened in the SB64. One more thing, at the SB64 climate meeting, there is a global fund that was set up to help these victims because our working group has been following all these board meetings since I have participated since the fourth board meeting until the recent seventh board meeting. A global fund was set up to help these victims, meaning these are the targeted nations who have been suffering from climate crisis. Wealthy nations promised 822 million US dollars over 3 years, but they have only actually handed over 450 million USD. That's the report that we came from, that we gathered at the SB64. So to put that in perspective, climate change displaces millions of people, and this fund, the 450 million USD over 822 promised USD million dollar, has less than half of what was promised. That is so much more of a hurting. If you're a child promised by a parent, I'm giving you a full scholarship, but then at the end, you're just given a half. So you just can't finish your schooling, right? So that's what happened at the SB64 in a larger context. What's next? The UNICEF was there, and we have heard this report. The children are hurting the most. This means these are our younger brothers. These are our younger sisters. The UNICEF reported that nearly 1 billion children lived in areas highly threatened by climate change, and over 62 million have lost their homes since 2016. Up to this point, there's no clear data if these numbers are increasing or has been decreased with our mitigation and adaptation measures. But at the SB64, the UNICEF reported that there is nearly 1 billion children who live in areas that are highly threatened by climate change, and over 62 million have lost their homes since 2016. What happens then, still at the SB64? There are 3 countries that have shared their funding ideas, funding modalities. These are Bangladesh, Vanuatu, and Fiji. This came out in the report coming from the members of the Yongo who were on the ground at the SB, and they have heard as they observed it in the observer room that Bangladesh, Vanuatu, and Fiji have their own initiative in providing their own funding modalities. So without the help of the UNFCCC, these 3 countries have their own initiative. So we can, the brighter side of this is that when they reported this at the SB64, we can benchmark to what these countries have been doing. That is, then there is a sense of independency. They are trying to fund their own recoveries. So that's some sort of a good point in there. So these are just the 4 major things that the loss and damage have been captured at the events, and we'd like to put into emphasis on that. That number 1, during the SB64, as a summary, there is no dedicated loss and damage agenda item that was put on the table for actual discussions, for actual debates. Hence, it was only found at the side events. These are the reported contexts coming from our Yongo loss and damage members. Now let's move on to the core outcomes towards the end of the SB64 in relation with the loss and damage. So from the official decisions made at the conference, these are what the civil society are demanding. So when we say civil society, this means across the civil society working groups that are trying to help mitigate the climate crisis. So what are the core outcomes? Number one, there is no official paperwork because, once again, the topic of the loss and damage didn't have its own official agenda space. So the conference ended without any without any formal written agreements on how to handle it. But could we say is there a small win from that? Yes, there is. It was reported with our Yongo Loss and Damage Working Group. On the bright side, the committee in charge agreed on a rule called the direct budget support, or the DBS. So what is this direct budget support? This means that when the fund finally gets money, it can be sent directly to the country's government, the victimized country's government, cutting through red tape. Because it's a sense of emergency. For example, if there's a natural disaster that's being hit in the country, knock on the woods, it wouldn't happen to any of us here. So there is a direct budget support to that. And this came out as one of the core outcomes at the SB64. It's either we should not wish to receive this kind of fund because we don't wish to unfortunate events, but this is a good light that there is a small win of this kind of outcome. But in the larger context, ever since Yongo has been created, Yongo has been established, we are still demanding the developed countries to go out with pledges. They have to contribute because they didn't have this deep feeling of what it is like to be hit by a certain disaster that this victimized nation has not been done anything wrong about it. So what's the demand, the core outcome of this fighting for fairness? The developing countries is telling, show us the money. What would that mean? Promises don't pay the bills. So they have to stop making pledges and start sending the actual cash so we can distribute it. And what's the end for that as a youth? While being there at the SB, either you were participating actively on the ground or virtually, we have to speak up continuously. So this is the moment that those Yongo representatives that were sent in Bonn, there are three things that were made very clear in there. Number one, we see it on the photos and on the videos with these taglines. You have to make, or we have to make the big polluters pay for the damage they cause. Secondly, we have been repeating this over and over again since COP 28, 29, 30. You give them the money as grants or as gifts. You do not give money as loans. For example, if a hurricane destroys a country, making them take out a loan to rebuild just puts them into a deep debt. So it's not really either way helping if you receive money throughout a loan, right? So we are demanding here, the Yongo continuously are actively speaking up, give this money as grants, not loans. Lastly, what is happening at the SB64 is that it is not about a political debate. This is not only a political debate. For millions of people, this is a daily reality of losing everything one day at a time. So we need money now. And almost all of us in the planet across nations are experiencing this rising temperature. And if all the nations will not pledge or will not contribute, then we cannot cope with the climate crisis. So those are the heavy things that I give you in this sharing, because that's the That's the report that came out from our participation in the SB64. So we will now go with how do we look at the future. So this is what the world leaders need to fix at the next big global climate summit that's going to happen in November in COP31. We have to tell the leaders that they have to force it into the schedule. What happens during the discussion in SB64, the promises that they made, the deadlines that they set, they have to force it into implementation. Because, for again, the loss and damage was ignored at the main tables during SB, and the heavily impacted developing nations are pushing to ensure that it gets its own permanent mandatory headline spot on the schedule at all future summits. There are already submissions on the grants by nation, and we don't have yet the data who these nations have already been submitted. But in the next week, July 9, 10, and 11, the ninth board meeting for the FRLD will be happening. Although I am invited and supposed to be there at the next, but I have a prior engagement with that. We will be continuing to follow what's happened in the submissions of these nations in accepting their grants. So hopefully you have to check out our Facebook page, our Instagram, and our LinkedIn, because we have been following all these discussions of the FRLD. What are the key outcomes in the SB64? What happens during the specific loss and damage board meeting that will happen next week in Manila, Philippines, and what are the public decisions made that will be that the civil society organizations or other NGAs can find real information towards COP31. So those are the future things that the loss and damage have been thinking about. Number one, again, that is to tell the leaders to force them into the schedule. All the discussions made in the SB64, whether or not LND was there, they have to put it into schedule in COP31. Secondly, we have to follow what's happening in the FRLD meetings, and we have to keep the support flowing. If you're familiar with Santiago Network, this is a group called, there is a group called the Santiago Network that sends technical experts to help poor countries map out climate risk. So right now, at the SB64, its support is only guaranteed until 2028. So we're telling these people, the leaders need to vote to extend their support. Because without the Santiago Network, the poor countries can be even more left behind. Because what they need is contribution. And in order to get that fund, they have to submit proposals. And when you have to submit proposals, it must be a competitive one. If you lose the chance, then the only person who can help you improve your proposal is through the technical experts advisors through the Santiago Network. But we have to keep this Santiago Network active, not only until 2028. So as part of looking into the future, the Yongo keeps on speaking and recommending that the Santiago Network technical experts, they have to extend their help in poor countries to map out climate risk, not only until 2028, but until everyone is resilient and everyone is competitive enough to submit proposals. Now, I'm already in the last part of this sharing. What would be those big questions that the negotiators must answer? And these are the thoughts coming from the youth. Because we've heard the figures, 822 million US dollars, and they only promised 450 million USD that's already deposited in the bank. How do we actually get countries to pay up and complete this 822 USD? And secondly, how do we protect things that you cannot put a price tag on? These are women, when a community is flooded, they don't just lose houses, they lose their culture, they lose their ancestral burial grounds, They lose their mental peace. No one can pay about that. I mean, money is not enough. So how do we protect this that we can put a price tag on? So it's a challenge for the leaders to figure out how to measure and help with these non-economic losses. So these are the big questions that we have to ask the big the leaders. So here is our big takeaways at the SB64 with the loss and damage working group. And this is the overall mood and the political games being played behind the closed doors. The wealthy countries are dodging. That means the rich ones, the developed countries. These are the heavily polluting countries. They are actively avoiding any conversations that involve the words liability or compensation. They are terrified that if they agree to these terms, they can be held legally responsible or sued for trillions of dollars in climate damages, by which 822 million USD cannot really compensate them. Next, the conversations was everywhere. Even though it was not really put into the official agenda items at the SB64, it still leaked in the corners in Bonn. Every single person is saying about what's happening to the fund. How do we get the fund? When will the fund be accessed? So this conversation is everywhere anyway. And lastly, one of the big takeaways of the young people there in Bonn, we made noise. So it's not only those who were in virtual platforms, but those young people who dedicated their time, their effort, and their expertise to participate in the SB discussions. The young activists, our fellow young activists, they flooded Bonn, ensuring that politicians couldn't walk down the street without hearing demands for climate justice, protests, discussions at the Bonn camp. So it's everywhere. So that means we're still really active in helping through this climate crisis be intervened. So what's the bottom line in all of these discussions at the SB64 regarding loss and damage? Well, the official paperwork didn't move forward as fast as it should have. The actual organizations tasked with building the fund are quietly working behind the scenes on the rule books, safety guides, and project plans, so they are ready when the money finally arrives. And this is a cliffhanger for us in the loss and damage. After the SB64, the agenda items to be discussed in the meeting next week at the FRLD, these funds are yet to be discussed. The framework and the modalities are yet to be approved. The templates for the project proposals are yet to be debated because some qualifying statements per criterion are not clearly emphasized and explained by those writers. So while the FRLD meetings are going on, the debates are still there. The one intel that we get in there was that this initial release of fund will take place in 2027. 2027 until 2031. We're already past mid-year. That means we're already heading towards August. So the pressure is on. This FRLD meeting must take a decision to fully complete the 822 promised USD so that the 2027 next year, the implementation of the grants, the implementation of the contributions will be released to those countries who were eligible to the fund. So our question here is that, did our country submit a proposal? Are we knowledgeable enough how our government has taken seriously in the submission of this budget plan? So we have representatives there to be sent in the FRLD. We can ask our leaders in the Environment Bureau for each country. We have, as a young person, so we have the right to ask what's already what is the progress of the submission, which part of the submission did we fail, or did we submit the proposal that is subject to the discussion of the FRLD. As of this moment, we don't have the exact number of figures yet as to how many countries have submitted the proposal and have passed for the discussion during the FRLD meetings. We are yet to identify that, and we are yet to post that in our social media accounts if we are allowed to post this kind of information. So those are the updates coming from the loss and damage. This is only one of the many working groups under UNFCCC. So far, I have known only Yongo A's, Yongo Loss and Damage, climate finance. We also have children, but I'm really not sure who these focal points and contact points are. But as of the moment, I can send you the link of the IG of the loss and damage so you can keep track of what's happening in the loss and damage work stream. So that would be all. Thank you for taking time to listen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Nova, for such a powerful and emotional reflection. Loss and damage is one of those conversations that remind us climate change is already affecting real people, real homes, and real communities. But beyond these challenges, I also appreciate the hope you shared that young people still have the power to organize, advocate, and shape a more and just future. Thank you for bringing humanity into this conversation and reminding us that why this global conversation matters. So, before I open the discussion, I want to thank all the speakers. I believe today has shown us what climate conversations are. They're not only just negotiations happening in negotiating rooms, but they also happen in communities, classrooms, and youth spaces, innovation hubs, and conversation like this one. And we want to hear from everyone joining us today. So I want to open a conversation or an open discussion for anyone who has a question or a reflection of the conversation. I'll give a chance to 5 people to share. So the faster you raise your hands, faster get an opportunity. Thank you very much, and I hope Nova you have been able to share the Instagram of the Young Golos and Diamonds working group, so that you can be able to follow the discussion. It's a very interesting discussion for us young people to be able to learn and also to be able to follow. Yeah, thank you. I can start with Mr. Akava. Yeah, Mr. Akava.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity to speak in such an amazing platform. Actually, I'm much glad because I've learned a lot, all the way from the SB64 to the Yongo conversations, and I'll be looking forward to learning more and more in this platform. Thank you for the presenters. They have done an amazing job, and I've learned new concepts that I didn't knew before. Thank you. Thank you even for the moderators.
Thank you very much, Mr. Akava. I hope we have met expectation and have been able to learn more. We can go to Mr. Jared. Mr. Jared.
Okay, thank you so much for the opportunity and to the madam for the nice presentation. So my question is based on the loss and damage. Like she was mentioning that the fundings will be given to countries. But my question in regards to that is that how about to the organization which have requested for the fundings? Or it will just be through the country and the organization could get their money or their fundings. They could now do application to the country, so they can do the application as an organization for the funding. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. That's a wonderful question. Yes, we believe that we have many active non-government organizations and agencies that are under um, the the supervision or administration of a specific country. So we have this country support system. The CSS under the loss and damage will connect with your environmental bureau in your country, and then they will set a schedule to call for applications of the proposal. Then the non-government organizations can submit it to that environmental bureau, and then the country support system will take a look at your proposal. Once it is already checked, they will send you feedback on the things that you have missed in the items or on the things that you need to improve on the items. So it depends upon if the country support system is very strong in your country, then that means the higher the chance that your proposal will be reviewed at the FRLB. But so far, that is the thing that I have said a while ago. We are excited to see which organizations from this country have submitted the proposals that are yet to be discussed in the meetings, and which of these proposals have been missed out or are yet to be rejected, although that's a very negative one. But we hope that we are already knowledgeable on our country support system. I cannot tell you yet on the exact definition and the mandates and responsibilities of the country support system, because as of now, the loss and damage work stream is still working on how this country support system, their limitations and their delimitations in accessing to the proposals. There's so many things happening in the FRLB, one side on the country support system, one side on the funding modalities, one side on the Santiago network, helping these countries to submit proposals. That is why also I have said it ago that the pressure is on, because they have targeted it that by next year, these funds will be available to those countries. So we are yet to see on that. But for sure, with the question, can the non-government organization submit proposals to to your government? Yes, of course, because it's only those NGOs can actually bring meaningful proposals to the government.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Jared. I hope we have been able to, your question has been answered. So we can go to Mr. Abraham. Mr. Abraham.
Okay, thank you for giving me the floor. I'm a member of Yango. I appreciate the great speech. So my question is, how do you actually convince a developed country to give grant instead of loans? Like how do the developing countries, specifically in Africa and Asia, they can create a leverage and negotiation upper hand against these developed countries?
Thank you for that. Observing the discussions at the FRLD board meetings, developed countries are really dodging the discussions on when we speak about liability and when we speak about their accountability towards these developing countries. When we have tried ourselves to understand why these developed countries are dodging, because they have already known it, that they will be sued up with trillions of dollars from the damage that they cause. So that is why pledges can be sounding right than actual contributions to them.
Yeah, I hope your question has been answered. Maybe you can ask Mr. Bob or Sarah if you have some inputs you can be able to add. Mr. Bob or Sarah or James. Yeah, can
Okay.
continue.
Maybe just to add a bit on that, and I know particularly for those who follow the climate finance negotiations during COP, the issue around loans has actually been part of what, particularly for developing countries, has been a big issue for quite a while. And those who are following the climate finance negotiations, they know that it's one of the areas, particularly where the Africa group of negotiators have had a bit of challenge. And actually, even those who attended SB64 this year, and why particularly some of the agenda items, there was not much during SB64 on climate finance, but still it's one of the key areas, particularly around the loans. So it's not like a one-off thing, but it's a discussion that throughout COPs has been ongoing in terms of particularly for developing nations saying that when talk about climate finance, loans should not be part of that. But one of the key challenges actually has been that we still don't have like a definite from the UNFCCC, there's no definite interpretation of climate finance. Like people have different interpretation of climate finance. So you don't have like one standalone definition of climate finance under UNFCCC. And that's part of what has actually been bringing a lot of challenges, particularly for developing countries. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for adding those insights. I hope Mr. Abra, you have gotten some insights, and also you'll be maybe following Yengo Climate Finance Working Group. They are doing some amazing insights, and maybe next time we'll be able to have them in the conversation. Yeah, so I don't know if Sarah have something. So we go to Mr. Alfred. Yeah.
Yes, I just want to, finalize my topic with I want just to recommend you to always scale projects and create jobs, build long-term infrastructures, because you know that the opportunities there are, but the real challenge is access, and that's why youth and local communities mustn't only be included in climate finance, but they must help to design it. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much for that emphasis. So we can finalize with Mr. Alfred. Alfred, if you can hear me, you have a question, then can continue. It's Alfred.
Yes, again, Afra Gabriel Flomo from Liberia. I've been volunteering in the climate space for a little longer, and then very much affected by climate change. But sadly, there has been non seen or recognized solutions or policies that can help them out. And we have advocated over the why we can get any solution. We have programs on summits. We can get solutions at our level. So I'm thinking, have there been any policy or climate solutions established for people living in remote areas who survive on farming, meaning farming and hunting purposes?
Yeah, thank you. I can give a chance to Mr. Bobson to answer that question. He has a best experience in that area. Mr. Bob.
Sorry really for that. I was a bit distracted. Can you repeat the question?
Okay, so I'm saying few of us in the advocacy business, we've been out there to different communities far from the urban setting. Have there been any climate solution or climate policy to protect or help those people who are highly affected but they live very far from the city, they are in remote areas? Have there been policies or climate solutions established for them? Or is there a plan to establish some?
Thank you a lot. So, one thing that in 2015, so there's a lot of echo. Okay, but during 2015, when countries agreed on the Paris Agreement, And when countries agree on the Paris Agreement, one of the things that countries had to agree on how they're going to reduce emissions. And each country was supposed to develop a national determined contribution. So the national determined contribution is as a country, it's more like as a country, this is what you're going to do in terms of ensuring that you're able to reduce emissions. So each country has their own national determined contribution. And right now, for most countries, they've already done their third, which is the 3.0. So it's based on it's country specific, based on countries. So countries are the ones supposed to come up with actions in terms of how they're going to protect their communities, how they're going to be able to ensure they're able to reduce emissions. So in each case, it's country specific. But when it comes to COP, we normally have different negotiating blocks. So they're negotiating blocks based on the interest from each region. So, for example, like in Africa, there's an African group of negotiators, which is AGN. So they normally ensure that the interests of African countries are taken care of when it comes to negotiation. Then at the same time, there's the G77 and China, which is a bigger grouping. But there are also other negotiating blocks or groups. So each negotiating group is supposed to ensure that they're able to take the interests of their countries or the interests of their region. So it depends with countries, but also depends with which interest from the countries, but also in which negotiating group you're part of when it comes to the COP processes.
Okay, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope you guys have been able to learn a lot. So I'll give a chance to our speakers to share their parting shots. Then I'll be able to finalize the conversation. So we'll start with Madam Sarah. Madam Sarah, if you can hear me, you can just give your parting shot. Then we can go to Madam Nova. Yeah. Madam Sarah, Rashid.
Yes, please, can you repeat?
You can share your parting shot or a key message to the young people in here because they have been listening to this
Yes.
conversation.
Yes, please. I always say just go pitch climate solutions and work on green startups. This is the most important thing for climate impact problems and also climate finance.
Thank you very much for that and for the emphasis of on terms of green economy and young people taking action at home. So we can go to Madam Nova. She can hear me. You can give us your parting shot and a very strong message to the young people.
All right. Hello, once again. We only have one message that is for us to remember in in the ways that we can and as much as we can. We have to do our best because climate crisis is something that can be controllable. But as of now, what we're feeling, what we are seeing, and what we have been um, hearing all over the news, we cannot control the events. So for as long as we can and as much as we can, we have to do something um, for change. And as a youth, all of us here are youth. We have we have to contribute to our nearest organizations and then be able to continually contribute to the green initiatives, to the climate solutions, as what Sarah has been talking about, the innovative solutions, because the young people are very dynamic, the young people are very active, the young people are powerful, the young people have the advantage of taking all these technologies and sciences. So what we only need is to manage them accordingly to our intellect. So as much as we can and as long as we can, we have there is a chance for us to change one day.
And thank you very much for that insight. And actually, you have just mentioned we take action where we are, and that's the key thing again. Execute action. If you can hear me, just send a reaction. I want to confirm if you guys can hear me. Amazing, 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 amazing. So we can go to Mr. Bob Aston. Yeah.
So thanks a lot, first for organizing, bringing together young people from different countries. One thing, particularly from long ago, what most countries normally assume is that youth normally go to COP maybe just to make noise and the rest, which is not the case. There's a lot in terms of just engaging during COP, during SB, listening in, following the negotiations, and I think this is what's really great. So, so everything that we do, and I think just based on my presentation, everything that you do actually revolves around the education, training, capacity building, public participation, public awareness, public access to information, and also the competition. So we maybe just as a parting shot, first I wish everyone all the best as you prepare for COP31. Hopefully, just based on the try to engage so that at least you can be able to know what's happening at the global level. The moment you know what's happening at the global level, it's also easy to link what's happening at the global level with what you're doing on the ground. So it usually really helps what you're doing on the ground, you're able to link it to those happening at the global level. So thank you all, and do enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I don't know if Mr. James is still here, but I'm not so sure if he's still here. So thank you,
Yes, I am
everyone.
here.
Yeah, you can continue. You can give us your parting shot and maybe respond to some few things. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. I had an internet issue, but I don't know what happened next after SB64 Youth Action Club. Okay, I think first we have to be, sometimes we have to be aggressive, and we are supposed not to just be like, okay, whatever happening is okay for us. And we should stop also blaming on the government, like the government doesn't provide budgets or funding or whatever. Rather, we are supposed to put ourselves in the shoes that we can find ourselves where we want to be. So I think after SB64 now, is because we have already know what exactly has happened during SB64, we are supposed to find a way that it can help us, like okay, maybe on the issues of national youth statement, we have to be a very active on them, because those are the ones which can be uh, explain the youth and children's demand during COP31. So I think we have to do a little bit more of collaboration, maybe in terms of organizational collaboration or any other kind of institution that you think can help you to be, I mean, to participate in COP31. And one thing I would like others to understand is participate in COP doesn't mean we've made it. Rather, it gives you an opening mind to see what the world has to offer with you and see how you can offer it. So my call to action is we should learn how to take up the space and cementing ourselves, because nothing is greater than taking up space and cementing ourselves. Thank you for listening, and wishing you a very fantastic night and evening.
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. James, Mr. Aston, and also everyone. It was such a honest and engaging and meaningful conversation. I believe today has shown us something very important. Young people are not disconnected from climate conversation because they don't care. So many times they are simply not included in the spaces where these discussions happen. But today we change that from adaptation, climate finance, airs and loss and damage. We've seen how global conversations connect directly to our communities, opportunities, and future. And beyond the discussion, I think what makes this session special is the realization that young people across different countries are facing similar realities, asking questions, and carrying similar hope for the future. And as GSI Hub, we believe this conversation should not end here. This session is becoming part of the bigger vision, a future where African youth are only not participants in climate conversations, but contributors, innovators, storytellers, and decision shapers. And that's why moving forward, we're beginning consultations and conversations around African youth climate mandates, a youth-led process that seeks collective voices, priorities, ideas, and recommendations from young people across the continent as we move towards COP31 and eventually the African COP32. I want this process to be human-centered, inclusive, and practical. So today is not the end, it is the beginning of something bigger. To all our speakers, thank you for your time, wisdom, and generosity. To everyone who joined us, thank you for showing up, engaging, and believing in the power of youth conversation. Let's continue learning, let us continue organizing, and most importantly, let's continue imagining building the future we want. So thank you so much, everyone, and thank you for joining, and have a lovely evening. Bye-bye.
Bye bye.
Bye, everyone, and thank you, Kelvin. Good job. That was really nice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Where do we submit our names?
Next time.
Okay. Okay, we are submitting in attendance. Thank you.
Bye bye. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation.
Bye-bye. Have a lovely evening. So I've shared the attendance and also the link to our WhatsApp group. You can just join and be able to learn on what we are doing and what next for us as young people.
Sorry, Sir Kevin, where do I submit the attendance?
Yeah, I've shared the name. So sorry, I thought I was speaking. So I've shared the link, so you can be able to share your name and also how best you can be able to or how best you can be able to assist. Feel free to share inspiration, how the session was, and how we can improve it. So I hope that one helps. Zumbo. Hiyo session yote iko recorded.
Okay, see you.
Hakuna audio. Unaambia session haina sauti. Anazalia man. Aje sasa. Nimesoma speech zangu 2 3 niko sawa. Kwa sauti ya upole. Fuck man. Hii session ina Usiniambie kitu ina sauti. Sasa nitatoa wapi sauti? Session zetu tunapanga fix. Sawa. Nifundishe kwa sauti ya upole. Hii kitu ina sauti nazalia bwana. Ai, ai, ai. Guy. Wow. Hello.
Yeah, hello.